Taking care of your money means that you're willing to look at it. You're willing to have this practical level relationship where you know where your money is going, you know what your expenses are, you know what it costs to run you and your life roughly each week. Because of course, abundance is an inside job, and your intuition is the key to unlocking it all. Hello and welcome. I'm Rebecca Davison, founder of the Intuitive Life Academy, the leading place to develop your intuitive and psychic gifts. As an ascension guide and light leader, I'm committed to bringing you all the latest tools, developments, and the neuroscience available when it comes to the art of effortless manifestation. This show is for light workers and for those who identify that your intuition is your greatest guide to bring you happiness, expansion, and money. With my corporate banking background, you'll receive practical advice along with all the energetic tools that you can apply in your life today. So if this resonates with you, let's jump into the world of abundance and learn what it takes to experience true freedom. Hello and welcome, folks. Welcome to the Intuitive Abundance Podcast. This is your host, Rebecca Davison. Welcome to this space where we journey deeper into abundance, knowing how to create it energetically, knowing how to shift into flow, knowing how to get out of our own way to be able to create it. So I want to talk to more practical matters today. If you don't know, I actually used to work in a bank for about 13 years, and I really want to share some information that you may be aware of or may not be aware of, but I think it's really pertinent to share this information. So, massive disclaimer, I am not a registered financial advisor. This is literally my personal opinion and my own viewpoints from having worked in a bank. But yeah, massive disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor, so please take this information and use it with that in mind. So having worked in banking and understanding, I guess, to some level, like I worked for 13 years in banking and I did quite a few different roles. I worked as a teller, so counting cash, and then I worked as a banking advisor, so helping people borrow money to buy their home or their first home or a property, investment, etc. You know, you learn quite a few things in terms of how banks operate and what, motivates them and what they do to motivate their staff, etc. So I want to talk about regular day-to-day banking and also some other things that I just think are helpful and important. And number one being is, of course, you want to know your numbers. You know, the amount of times that I have worked with people before, or I've noticed when people are in scarcity or lack, they don't look, right? They don't take accountability. They don't look at their numbers. They don't know sometimes how much they have in their bank account. They don't know their budget. They don't know how much they cost to run. And I know this might seem elementary, but this is always one of those things, and this is one of my top tips, right, is to do a regular financial checkup. You know, for myself personally, I have a spreadsheet of all my outgoings, so I know when things go out, I know when things need to be paid, I know where I need to have money in the right place to have those payments be made. It provides a huge amount of clarity in just one spreadsheet. So of course that's, like all sorts of payments like electricity, my cell phone, internet, etc., all those regular payments. And I will add to that if I've got an additional regular expense, like maybe I'm doing a program and there's a monthly cost for that. So that's what I'll put on the spreadsheet. I also have things like my GST and my provisional tax payments on that same spreadsheet, just so you can see it all in the same place. I also have on that spreadsheet what my statement of position is. Statement of position, if you're not aware, is basically everything, all your assets that you have, less any liabilities being debt. So it gives you a snapshot if you sold up and went and lived in, a shack in the woods and you wanted to consolidate your position, sell your property, etc., than what you would have to be able to do that. Now, of course, that fluctuates depending on how much debt you have, depending on what's happening in the market, if you own a property, how much demand there is, because of course that's obviously going to push up your statement of position if the demand if you own a property, for example, if the demand is high. Also includes obviously any other investments that you have, so a share portfolio or any investments, any bonds that you have, even things like Bitcoin, etc. So, and it's really good to have that snapshot, right? It's good to know your numbers. It is good to have clarity. If you want your numbers to grow, you want to know what they are in the first instance. I've done things before in the past where when I've been paying down debt and I have seen, over a period of time it coming down, that can be really motivating. Psychologically, it can be like, yes, I'm moving in the right direction and yes, this feels really good. And I think that's so important. Again, taking care of your money means that you're willing to look at it. You're willing to have this practical level relationship where you know where your money is going, you know what your expenses are, you know what it costs to run you and your life roughly each week, because of course that can vary. So the other thing that I think is really important is to make sure that you are talking to your financial institutions. So whether that's your investment company or if it is your bank, on a regular basis, go and be proactive, because sometimes I've noticed that when banks have business, they can be proactive in securing a new business and not always focusing their attention on the clients that they do have. So be proactive and go and see your bank manager. I would recommend probably once every 6 months. Usually your insurance company or your insurance broker would do this with you anyway. They would be proactive and they would say, hey, have your family circumstances changed? Have your personal circumstances changed? Have you gotten married? Have you got a new job? Has your income increased? Have you had a baby? And then they would adjust your insurance cover accordingly. Go and do this with your bank. Have you got the right bank accounts? Have you got things set up for you in a way that is saving you the most amount of money? Is there a way that you can structure things that you end up paying less interest? Now, if you have debt, now let's specifically talk lending as in a mortgage or a loan. What you want to do with that is you obviously want to pay the highest amount that you can comfortably afford. So I would encourage people to stretch themselves. The amount of interest that you can save over the period of a 25 to 30 year loan, if it's a mortgage in particular, is massive, right? People don't understand that let's say you borrow 150 grand, you can end up paying that much in interest over 30 years. So top tip, pay as much as you can comfortably afford. Make sure you're increasing your payments every year. So diarize it in your calendar and contact your bank and say, I want to increase my payments. Now, sometimes with the apps that you have, you can do this online yourself. You can just go in and look at any lending that you have, and then you can go in, make a lump sum payment or increase your payment amount. Make sure you're doing this on a consistent basis, even if it's only $5 per annum, right? It has a cumulative effect, and it's so important in terms of paying your debt off faster. And again, it doesn't have to be arduous. You would like to think that you would be creating enough income to justify at least that kind of amount. But over a period of time, especially depending on how often your loan repayments are, if they're weekly, $5 a week is definitely going to add up. If it's monthly, it might be a little bit different. So maybe it's going to be $50 a month or something. But make sure you go back and do it annually. It's important, right? It's important to be aware too of paying attention to what the interest rates are doing so you can secure the lowest possible interest rate probably for the longest period of time, or knowing what your own circumstances, what your intention is. And of course, right, if you secure, let's say, again, the 150K loan and you've got it at 5%, for example, and the interest rates go up to 7%, of course, when you go to pay back that debt, right, the bank's going to do a calculation based on what you have secured it at and what the interest rates have gone up to. in terms of you repaying the debt. And of course, it works the same way as well if the interest rates go down. So if the interest rates go down, then you know there's a good chance that they can lend that money out again, but it will be at a lower interest rate, right, to somebody else, for example. So these are all things that you want to take into consideration when you're setting up your loan structure. It's kind of important to know yourself, know what your goals are, what your intention is, and creating structures that work for you. And being aware of things like that, those are things that you want to take in consideration, right? If it's your intention and you know that you're going to stay true to your intention to pay your debt back as fast as possible, then securing an interest rate for a shorter period of time makes sense, because once it comes off its fixed term, there's not going to be any early repayment cost. I know some of this can get into the nitty gritty, and it can feel sometimes like for regular consumers, it can feel a little bit like, ugh, do I need to know all this information? I remember clearly, obviously, explaining to people in regards to buying their first home, and you'd probably get about 45 minutes in before people started to look a little bit glazed. There's often a lot of terminology in banking which can feel a little bit overwhelming. Like people often, they say, oh, my mortgage, but the mortgage is actually a mortgage instrument, which means that the bank basically has it that they're registered on the mortgage instrument. So it's actually a legal document as opposed to a loan. Like a mortgage instrument is different from a loan, but people often use the word mortgage for their home loan debt, right? So it can get a little bit, crossed over, and it helps to understand, right? It helps to understand so you can take financial control. You can have sovereignty over your financial abundance. And being aware of these little things is super important. Depending on what your credit card debt is, my plan for you, if you have a home loan and you've got a big credit card debt, always speak to your bank about consolidating your debt position. So say you've still got that 150k loan, if you've got some equity in your property, i.e. your property value is, more than 200,000 probably. That's probably 80%, 75%. Go and talk to your bank about consolidating your credit card debt. So putting it from the credit card and onto your home loan. And the reason for this is because you can get a much better interest rate. Usually credit card interest rates in New Zealand at least are around 22%. That's so high, and it can be crippling. And I used to see this a lot, and oftentimes it wouldn't make sense. I've seen people be issued with credit cards where they made $20,000 with like huge limits, like 10,000, which is just nuts, right? For somebody who's earning that kind of money. And I've seen people who've been mega wealthy because of their position, their debt position, they've only been extended $2,000. So when you're applying for a credit card, of course, all those things are taken into consideration. And one thing that people don't know is that if you have got a really big limit on your credit card and you're trying to save for a home, or you're looking to buy a home, you want to get that credit card limit down, because paying, if it's $10,000 credit limit, 22%, that's a big repayment amount each month. And they do that based on the limit, not on what you actually owe, because of course you have access to that money. So best thing you can ever do is get your credit card limits down. I kind of base my credit card limit for my business, I think, is about 2.5, in the respect that if I need to go, overseas for something or an emergency and get somewhere quickly, once upon a time, pre-C, I could do that, right? But again, usually that's probably the only thing, that you would really need to be able to do in a hurry, right, is maybe book a flight overseas for family members, etc. So starting to take all these things into consideration, like my personal credit card is tiny. It is $500 and I will not budge, right? And when the credit card companies send you a thing that says, hey, would you like to increase your credit card limit? Say no, right? It's too easy. And I've seen it so many times where people have gone, even to the point, to be fair, where I actually felt guilty sometimes about selling people credit cards, because you just knew that people see it as free money and you end up paying for it, and you end up paying a lot. Like 22% is really high, right? That's a massively high interest rate. And it's something to take in consideration, especially if you've got longer term goals like buying a house or buying another house. Keep your credit card limits low. And I know some people who have a higher income, they would pay it off every month, but they still take it into consideration. And even too, when I worked in private bank for high net worth clients, even sometimes even then when they were, generating huge incomes, if they had two credit cards, one was for 10 and one was for 20, that kind of thing can definitely still impact your credit position when you're looking to apply for a loan. Maybe it's for a commercial property or something like that, whatever it may be. It has an impact on your position. So some things to take into consideration. And again, why end up paying money for, again, a credit card is really paying for things in the future, right? You're paying now for something, buying now for something that you're going to pay for in the future. A really good rule of thumb is to go, well, if I can't afford it now, what's it going to take? And again, applying energetic principles to move into that space of being the person who can become abundant, to choose to buy something outright. And even sometimes people, again, if you get a higher purchase, if it has got an interest-free period, make sure you pay it off, right? Do the sums, do the math, make sure if it's 6 months interest-free that you know what the repayments are to pay it off. Because if it goes from 0 and then to 22%, I've seen it before where people have forgotten, or they've been a bit lax about it, or they've thought, oh, it's interest-free, so I don't need to worry. And then boom, it blows out, which is kind of a way what those credit, the people who are offering the credit are intending for you, because they still need to make money from the interest that they're charging. But just being aware that there are ways around this. And one of the first things you want to do if you have got a home loan, if you haven't got a home loan, make sure that you are shopping around for a personal loan that is lower than the credit card interest. So of course, if you're paying 22% on a credit card, getting a personal loan for like 14%. And again, I'm talking about New Zealand percentages here. So if anybody's listening from overseas, I'm making it applicable to New Zealand residents. Obviously, that makes sense. That's huge, right? That's still 8% that you're saving yourself. But being aware of these things, I've seen people get themselves in a tangle. I remember one time, bless them, this poor man came in and saw me, and he was increasing his debt repayment. He had an automatic payment. He had $30,000 worth of debt. And he was increasing his repayments, and he would literally have $20 after he had been paid and then was making his debt repayment. And, it was just sometimes stuff like that was just so disheartening because, he was almost in tears because obviously he'd gotten himself into a pickle and he was needing to make this repayment. And again, I was prompting him and urging him to change the structure that he had, but he was adamant that he wanted to do it that way. But, it wasn't even possible for him to live. Nobody can live on $20 a month, right? So being more aware. So again, know your numbers, right? Make sure that your credit card debt is as low as possible. In an ultimate world, what would it take to not even have one? Or to have very minimal limits in terms of being able to use, because credit cards are useful, right? Especially in terms of booking things online or overseas travel, etc. Make sure that you're talking to your financial advisors. Keep in touch, get them to give you information, get them to help you to make decisions that create growth. With a bank manager, right? Are they being helpful in terms, and again, don't be afraid to shop around among banks. If you have got a good position, and from a bank's perspective, of course, if you're a client who's got a large home loan and you're looking to buy another property, that is a highly valued client. Right? That could be, say you've got 200 on your personal property and you're wanting to buy another property worth, I don't know, 500, like $700,000 worth of debt. The bank's going to be making a substantial amount of money from you over a period of time. Get them to behave accordingly. They should be giving you discounts on your interest rates on your home loan. Be the person who's owning the fact that your business has value. Should be giving you free accounts. They should be giving you free transactions. They should be giving you group discounts if you've got your insurances with the bank. Make sure that you're asking for that. Use the leverage that you have. No bank wants to lose business because, of course, even the process of conveyancing, which is where you work with a solicitor in terms of getting the home loan set up and registered to a particular bank, that takes time and it takes effort. And that's why banks often give you, $2,000 towards your legal costs, right? Shop around, make sure, go to the bank that you are with and be forearmed. Go and say, well, I've spoken to these other banks and given my position, this is what they would offer me. Can you beat that? That's savvy, right? That is financial sovereignty when we're willing to take that level of accountability and responsibility in terms of being aware and making choices accordingly. So what else would I recommend to people in terms of your financial situation? Make sure that you feel comfortable with the service that you receive. I'm talking not just about your bank, but I'm talking about your trusted financial advisors. So these are even people like your real estate agent. You want to really trust them. Because you want them to back you, right? You really want to create a relationship that you trust with people like that, so they back you. Your solicitor, you want to feel really safe and comfortable with your solicitor. Same with your accountant. You want to be able to ask your accountant questions that your mind might think, oh, I feel kind of silly about asking this. I've seen that a lot where people would berate themselves because they didn't know the answer already, or they would feel intimidated about asking you questions because they felt like they should know already. Make sure you find trusted financial advisors who are humble enough that it doesn't matter what you ask them for clarity, that they will tell you and they won't make you feel judged or shamed, right? That you are asking this question. It's so important. Ask around, right? Use your intuition to guide you in terms of, I've done it before myself. I've swapped, accountants. My previous accountant was great, love her to bits. But again, just in terms of focus, wasn't quite a right fit anymore. I've changed solicitors for the same reason, to make sure that I have this team that I feel really safe with. Like a team that I know they can trust and depend on, because they're invested too in me getting a great result. And things that I value in those kind of relationships are responsiveness and efficiency, right? You want a solicitor who's going to respond quickly and going to get the job done in the shortest amount of time. You want an accountant who's going to say, this is what you should be aiming for. This is where we want to take your business. Have you considered doing this, this, and this? You want that feedback. Two heads are always better than one when it comes to your financial position. Even with investment advisors, even asking them, I've done this before myself where I've asked even really simple technical questions like, what happens in this scenario? Can you please explain it to me? That's important. And I think also too, it's really easy for people sometimes to kind of lose their sense of power or their sense of empowerment when it comes to financial situations. Be willing to take your time and ask as many questions as you need so you feel comfortable with what is happening. I've seen that often when people were buying a house, and it's important not to feel rushed, right? It's important to feel safe. It's a huge milestone often in a person's life when they purchase their first property. And as New Zealanders, we love to do that. Make sure you feel comfortable with what is happening and unfolding. Make sure that you feel comfortable with the people around you. Do not hesitate if you feel like something is off with a person or a situation. Don't be afraid to ask questions to gain clarity and make decisions accordingly. If you feel like someone has not got your back, change them out. Right? So important in those kind of not high risk, but more kind of emotive, where you're experiencing the unknown, to be the person who's willing to go, you know what? I don't know, and it's okay that I don't know, but I need to know, so I want to find out, and I want to be surrounded by people who are going to be supportive and helpful and kind. I think it's so important too. One thing that I learned as a banking advisor especially, was that a lot of solicitors, didn't know, right? They didn't know the answers, or they didn't know how the conveyancing process worked from the bank's point of view. And I was really surprised, because as a newbie banking advisor, I had just automatically assumed that every solicitor under the sun would have a better idea or a better understanding. And it was a really eye-opening experience to go, wow, just because they use the term solicitor doesn't mean that they know everything. So don't make assumptions, right? That people, because they have a label, have more experience or know more than you do. A couple of times as a banking advisor, I'd be like, wow, this is really interesting, right? Because I would be having to explain the conveyancing process. Maybe it was a legal executive that I was talking to as opposed to a solicitor, but there were a few times where I was surprised because the solicitor literally did not understand what was happening and why the bank needed certain information. So again, know your numbers. Be willing to talk to your banking advisor. Make sure that you're getting the best deal, right? Go around different banks and say, hey, this is my financial position. This is what I owe. This is what my assets are. And make sure that you're getting the best deal. Like, what's the best deal you could offer me if I came to you? So you can go to your bank and say, how can you top this, basically? Your business is valuable from the bank's point of view. It costs money, it costs time to get a home loan client, especially over on the books. So treat yourself accordingly. Make sure that you are throwing money into any debt that you have, again, as high as you can comfortably afford. If you've got extra money from a bonus or something, it makes a lot of sense to put it towards debt reduction, because you're never going to beat that in terms of saving you money. So again, sometimes it's good to have a little cushion of money, a savings account, etc. But again, priority should always be debt reduction. But again, it's all about feeling safe, and that's always going to be different for everybody, because everybody has a different risk profile. Right? Like, some people are like, if you're self-employed and you're like, it's up to me and I know I can go out and make a stack of cash and I'm all good with that, you're probably going to have a very different risk profile from somebody who has a regular 9-to-5 job, has a set income, and is more conservative in their outlook. Get to know your own risk profile. It's super important when it comes to investing. For example, myself, like, I am interested in digital currency. I think that it's exciting and illuminating. I think that anything that kind of shakes the foundations of our financial institutions, especially, and again, that's a whole other conversation, but especially in terms of past behavior, anything that kind of comes in to disrupt that industry is probably a good thing, in terms of hopefully the financial institutions, pulling their socks up and playing ball. And the bank makes huge sums of money. There's no secrecy around that. They publish it every half year. But I think every half year or maybe every quarter. But again, looking at the revenue that the bank makes, and that is from X number of clients or X number of people in that banking institution, you want to see yourself as valued, because and you want to make sure that you are being treated with respect. And that goes both ways. I mean, being on the other side of being a banking advisor, what you learn is that people associate their value with money. They take it really personally often. They can get highly emotional about money. I've had to sit through, a beautiful couple, and he was so angry and she was just sitting there, and they were obviously, they were separating, and it was just so tense and uncomfortable. And I had to ask him to leave, because of course, when a couple separates, you're kind of creating new bank accounts for her and creating new bank accounts for him, and you do that individually. And those tense situations where your heart's breaking for both of them, because they're falling to pieces, right? It's not always about the pleasure and joy of seeing somebody step into their new property and picking up the keys for their new place. And that's the thing, I guess, about all those points in our life, that when we get married, of course, what are we going to do in terms of joint bank accounts, and how's that going to work? From my experience personally, and also with seeing it financially, is usually what works best is a joint account and then separate individual bank accounts. So it still gives people autonomy to be able to make decisions around spending money, people often put a limit in place when they come together in partnership, in terms of like, if you want to spend money from a joint bank account and it's over X amount of dollars, that you have the, you contact the other person and say, hey, are you comfortable with me making this purchase? And from past experience, just having that sense of own independent identity plus a joint bank account for things like groceries, etc., which obviously you're both going to use, utilities, etc., makes sense. On the investment side of things, I think that it pays to learn about investing. It pays to learn about, and it's so actually a really, it's a bit of an art and a science in regards to investing, especially if you're doing things like shares, because that obviously involves research. You have to research companies and see how they're doing, see what their track record is, see what their brand is in a lot of ways out there in industry, and being aware of what that company's past record is, so therefore what you can expect in terms of dividends, but also too in returns of share prices. And also, like I said, knowing your own risk profile, and that's always going to be dependent on a couple of things. It's going to be dependent often on your age and how old you are. If you're 23 and you're just starting to invest, especially because obviously banks often focus on retirement in terms of investment, for obviously that's when they anticipate that's when you'll kind of need the money. In New Zealand, that's around 65. So that's often, the end goal. So a 23-year-old, they would have like 40 plus years of investing, right? So that they could probably take a greater level of risk over that period of time in terms of markets and swings and roundabouts, highs and lows. Whereas somebody who's only got 10 years, they'd probably want to be more conservative in their investment approach in terms of getting a decent return. But there's lots of different ways to compile an investment portfolio. Of course, you can have shares, you can have things that are more conservative, like a term deposit or just a savings account as part of that portfolio. You can have bonds, like government bonds, which are usually seen as, more of a sure bet. And then you can also have a higher risk profile on maybe a startup or a company that's just come into the, just been listed. And also too, a variable in terms of what the share price is going to be. But that can also be a lot of fun, to invest in a company that's just been listed and then to see the stock price soar. Of course, that's the ultimate outcome for everybody, but being the person who's kind of willing perhaps to take a bet on the unknown. A good example of that might be something like Facebook. I have no idea I'm actually going to look that up while I'm online. What's the share price of Facebook now? Like when they listed, I think I'm just looking it up, and I presume this will be in US dollars. I think when they first floated on the stock market, they were around 50, 53, 55 US dollars. The share price now is 378. So, that would have been a great investment to get into when it first came onto the stock market, right? So and the thing is as well, is getting your money to work with you in alignment with your lifestyle. What do you want? I think that's probably one of the most important questions when it comes to your cash, because everybody is different. Like some people want to accumulate wealth. They want to look at their trading screens and have 3 monitors going and be looking at what a share price is doing second by second by second. Like I'm working in private bank and having one client in particular who came to mind, going to see him at his home, and he was literally watching some shares moment to moment to moment. He was watching the exchange rates because he had a lot of money invested overseas, and then he would contact us and he would put orders in, and always and forever those orders would come in within like 24 to 48 hours. In other words, he was identifying what the exchange rate was going to do over that period of time. So he would put an order in to exchange a chunk of money at that price, which is, spreading your risk essentially. And then, of course, the order would hit, and we'd set it up, the order would hit, and the money would get converted. And it's another way, right, too. Some people spend time and energy making money off exchange rates. So the investment opportunities are limitless. And I think I think if you look at investing kind of like a cross between an art and a science, it has to be something that kind of really appeals to you and holds your interest for you to want to spend the time and energy. But it is super fun setting up a portfolio and kind of looking at what's happening, right? Has the market dipped? What shares have gone up? What shares have gone down? What's doing really well, right? What's had a company announcement and they've tanked perhaps? And again, this is why we want to get good at diversification and also being aware of your own personal tolerance for risk. That's why working in private bank was so fun, because a lot of the clients had a bigger appetite for risk. So they were taking bigger decisions, perhaps bigger investments, bigger risks in terms of what they were doing. And that's actually a really exciting place to be in terms of finances and seeing, what flies. And being willing to make those kind of decisions, big decisions quite quickly, and having things come to a reality. Like often they would contact us and they would say, I've seen this amazing opportunity, I want to buy into it, or I want to raise some money to actually buy these shares, etc. So super exciting place to kind of be in terms of helping people to create through financial abundance. And again, really starting to think about it for yourself. What is your level of financial literacy? Do you need to go and learn something? A really great place to go is to look to your accountant and to ask them if they have any trainings, or if they have any, information that would be beneficial for you. A lot of the times it's really simple information that can be so helpful to help you really move into that space where you have a greater understanding. And when you have a greater understanding, you can apply it to your own life experience. But you have to know what it is that you want. Like somebody who wants to live in Bali for the next 5 years, where it costs, $20 a night, New Zealand dollars, to stay in really nice accommodation, is probably going to have a very different outlook and focus perhaps than somebody who's, living and working on Wall Street. So, you have to make your money particular to your own financial situation, but depending on what you want to create. And knowing when an opportunity presents itself, a lot of times people, if they're not aware or if they're not tapped in, they will miss opportunities to create more wealth. And a lot of the time I've seen it, especially through my intuitive work, where people and opportunities presented to them, but because they are not really interested in exploring it, or they're not aware, they feel like, I don't know, and I would have to learn about it to know. And that kind of feels a little like it would be time consuming or frustrating. And they miss out on an amazing opportunity to create some cash. A great example of that is probably Bitcoin. And I know everybody's got an opinion about it. And again, from lots of different perspectives, even from, Bitcoin mining, etc. There's a lot of different aspects. There's always pros and cons to everything. But being in that space of kind of going, what's possible, And, I love the idea behind Bitcoin. I'm talking about all sorts of digital currencies, essentially, when I'm talking about Bitcoin, just generically. The concept, right, of deregulation. It's kind of exciting to me. You might think the total opposite, but I think it's actually a really interesting space to explore in terms of, it's literally a response to people wanting to be more empowered in terms of their financial opportunities. I know some people who do Bitcoin, digital currency exchanging, full time, because it's been more lucrative to them even when they've had massive dips. It's been more lucrative than it has been to have a regular 9-to-5 job. And I think, that's really fascinating, isn't it? Because that's creating new opportunities for people. It's creating enough confidence for people that they can actually go, you know what, I'm going to step into a completely unknown lifestyle, trading currency. I think that's really fascinating. And I think, that's definitely the way of the future. Like, how many years ago, 30 plus years ago, people would be like, I don't even know what you're talking about when it comes to a digital currency. So the way of the future, right, unfolding before us. So just wanted to give you guys, I guess, in this episode, some more practical action steps. Make sure that you're talking to your bank, make sure that you're paying your debt down as fast as possible. Make sure you're increasing your payments on your debt. Consolidate your credit cards if at all possible. Keep your credit card limits low. Maybe they're not right now, but make a plan to get them low and keep them low. It'll save you so much time, energy, and stress in the long term. I used to have massive credit card limits. I used to have like 2 cards and I had $15,000 between the 2 of them. And now I have 2 cards and it's like $3,000. Big difference in terms of risk, the interest that you pay, the stress. I've just seen so many people get into a pickle with credit card debt. Again, higher purchases, really sit down and do the math. If there is interest free for a period of time, like what's your intention in paying it off? Hold yourself in a greater level of financial accountability, especially for the long run, because I've seen sometimes people create so much stress for themselves emotionally because they haven't actually sat down and done their sums, or they haven't worked it out. In terms of looking at your financial situation, if you just have a job, I would always encourage people to create a side hustle. Even if it's like selling things on Amazon, I would start creating multiple streams of income. Because if you have a job, right, it's limiting, unless you're on, like commission or something like that. So you have the opportunity to start working universal principles, universal energetic law, to be able to start, you need portals to be able to create more wealth. And often if you have a job, it's not one of them. It's limited in how much you're actually going to receive, or it's going to be a grind in terms of being able to create what you want. It's, it's like having somebody else kind of put a limit on you. So I would always encourage people to set up a side hustle, do something that kind of lights you up. An Amazon, even looking at Bitcoin, whatever it may be, I'd encourage people always to do a side hustle because it's going to make you feel more empowered. Even if it takes a while to learn the ins and outs of it, maybe it's currency exchange, right? Making money through trading currencies. Maybe it's Bitcoin, maybe it's other form of investment. Maybe it is, even selling things on TradeMe, or making things and selling things on TradeMe, just so you have a sense of greater financial control. I think that's really, really important. If you're a business owner, the sky is the limit, right, in terms of what you're able to create. Business owners, absolutely applying energetic principles in terms of financial abundance all day, every day. Your business is a portal for abundance. It is literally, again, depending on how many businesses you have, you might have more than one. They are all portals where money can come into your world. So if you're starting to open a business or you have a business, start applying energetic principles. Go back and listen to the start of this podcast if you haven't already. If this is the first time you're tuning in, and listen and start applying those principles, you will see huge jumps in your income when you're starting to apply universal law to your business. It's definitely one of the best ways to create wealth is to become a business owner. It's also an amazing container for personal growth in terms of accountability, responsibility. You're the person who is creating it. It's your energy, it's your vibration, it's your frequency, it's your level of responsiveness, it's your ability to figure things out and make things work. It's your ability to put yourself out there, be visible, be seen. It is an amazing container in terms of satisfaction and bringing you bliss and joy and cash and all the good things. So obviously, as a business owner, I would strongly encourage other people to step into that if it speaks to you. You want it to light you up. If you currently have a job and, because eventually your side hustle could become your full-time job, you always want to create containers of energy around you where the potential to make more is possible. So if you have a job at the moment, you don't have anything else, and your job is just a set income with no bonuses, no commissions, go find yourself a side hustle. Seriously, think about it. I know people who make money from making Lego on YouTube. There are people out there who are putting makeup on and they make money off that on YouTube. If there's a will, there's a way. You want to get passionate about it though. It wants to be something other than just making money. And this is where the concept of being in service comes into play. If you are choosing to be in service for the greater good of other people, even if it's selling toothpaste, right? Like, this toothpaste is amazing. It's going to give you the whitest teeth. It's going to give you the freshest breath. If that blows your hair back and excites you, then go do it. Create the portals of abundance. If you're just focused on the money, this is the ironic thing about money. If you're just focused on making money, that's not sustainable in terms of motivation, enthusiasm, and excitement. It can't be about the money. It has to be a greater purpose and cause than just money. You will never experience fulfillment or satisfaction from just wanting to make money. You need to make your vision bigger than that. So just some practical, tips, folks, in regards to making money. Remembering, of course, little things like, like the bank will charge you 25 cents for a transfer or things like that. It costs them like 2. Right? So remember, 2 cents that is for a transfer. So just remember to go and make sure that your bank is loving you up and giving you the best deal, great service, right? Make sure that they are treating you well and not taking you for granted. Make sure that if you have a lot of products with the bank, that they're really giving you discounts on your interest rates, that they're giving you perks, that they're giving you, we used to do a lot of that in private bank. Making sure that our customers felt appreciated, taken care of, go and see them. We'd give them gifts at Christmas time. We'd acknowledge them and appreciate them. Really being in that place of being empowered with your money. Money goes where there is a good foundation. Money goes where there is sovereignty. Money goes where it is being seen and witnessed and appreciated and adored and taken care of. Right? Money will flow into containers where you are responsible towards it. Everybody, you think about it. Would you rather be in front of somebody who is responding to you, who is curious, who is interested? Or would you rather be in front of somebody who's just not paying any attention? Same goes for money. Money wants to be responded to. Money wants to be paid attention. Money wants to be appreciated. Love that word appreciation. Appreciate, right? It means gratitude on one level, but it also means to grow. So I hope you've enjoyed this more practical, from my banking background podcast today. If you enjoy the show, folks, I would love, love, love if you would share it with your friends and family. I think being a previous banker and now being an intuition coach in terms of helping people energetically with abundance, I'm super passionate, right, about people hearing this information and knowing what is possible for them. Once upon a time, I did have a JOB in the bank and I was limited in regards to my income. And, now I live in a reality where I pretty much make in a month what I would make in a year when I was in banking. So mind-blowing stuff, right? When you're prepared to get out of your own way, learn how universal laws work, develop your intuition, start tapping into the frequency of abundance and allowing it to move through your life. Please go and give us a review. Please come into the Intuitive Life Academy Facebook group. I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas in regards to what you would love to hear on the podcast. We would very much appreciate your reviews though. Obviously that helps us to allow other people to hear the information from the podcast. The more reviews we have, the more impact it makes in regards to other people hearing the information. The time has definitely come for people to claim their own financial sovereignty, to be in that space of knowing they are the creator of their own reality. And that is definitely my intention through offering this podcast. I am sending you so much love and light. I'll look forward to connecting with you again on the next show. Bye for now. Bye. Thank you for joining the Intuitive Abundance podcast today. If you've enjoyed the show, please be sure to subscribe and write us a review so we can help other people positively impact their lives. I would really love that. If you're ready to activate the energy of abundance within you, then be sure to go to www.intuitivelifeacademy.com to sign up for our abundance activation process. Until next time, here's to your ever-increasing freedom. All my love. Bye for now.